and the sacking of the popular rail minister Tom Harris. He's unusual in the government because he writes a blog, an online diary, and more than that, because he's prepared to say controversial things in it, suggesting in June that the economic slowdown hardly amounted to a 30-star crash in a posting entitled "Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now," and daring to express some sympathy for the Scottish Office Minister David Cairns, who resigned in protest at Gordon Brown's leadership. So, was it the blogging that got him sacked? He told me it was certainly a surprise to find himself going.
Yes, it was. I mean, I'm not going to pretend otherwise. When I got the call, it was late in the day, so the rule of thumb is that if you're not called early on in the reshuffle, then the chances are you're staying in post. And I got called later on, so in my stupidity, I actually assumed that I was being promoted, and the Prime Minister came on the line, and it was not thus. So yeah, I was pretty shocked.
What do you think were the reasons for this? Because you are one of the few ministers who blogs, and more than that, one of the few ministers who, in their blog, on their web diary, says things that depart from a fairly sort of sterile set of official talking points.
You have to be disciplined as a minister or as an MP when you're blogging. And even now, I can look back on every single post that I have ever written and say without a shadow of a doubt that I have never veered away from Labour Party or government policy. I mean, I've been very much on message. I've managed to do that in a way that I hope is quite entertaining to people, and I've given the impression that I am slightly, if you like, maverick, but actually I'm not. I stuck very closely to the government line, not just out of personal discipline, actually, because I believe the government's doing a very good job. And heaven knows I'm miserable now. I mean, that'll be on my gravestone, I expect.
Did you get a lot of feedback for that one?
Oh, yes. In the heat of the moment, some of the comments are very vicious, some of them are very supportive. Interestingly, colleagues from all parties here in the comments congratulated me and told me that they agreed with it.
Do you think, though, that post, whatever the reaction to it at the time, caused people to sort of mark your card and see you as a bit of a loose cannon?
There's always a risk. I fully accept that when you put your head above the parapet and say things that other ministers aren't saying, then of course Number 10 will take notice. I don't actually think that the blog itself and that particular post, I don't think those were contributory factors. Having said that, I have no idea why I was actually fired. So, I mean, if that's one theory, then I guess that's as good as any. And people just have to draw their own conclusions about the people who have been left out of the government and the people that have been brought into the government.
But you were also in your blog very sympathetic towards David Cairns, the Scottish Office Minister, when he resigned.
I know of at least one person very close to Number 10 who gave me a hard time at conference over that particular blog. And I told him that actually I meant every single word of it. I am very proud to be a friend of David Cairns. He's a great bloke. I disagreed with what he did. I told him at the time he shouldn't resign, but he did what he did for good reasons, and I stuck by a friend, and I knew when I wrote that post that that would possibly annoy people at Number 10. But so be it. I mean, that's who I am. The proudest moment of my whole political career was being appointed as a minister by Tony Blair. And that was after a weekend of frenetic activity where I was being asked to sign a letter by a number of colleagues who were calling for Tony's resignation. I refused to sign it, and I'm very proud that I didn't sign it. And, you know, you have to make your decisions and you stand by them, and I think that's what I've done.
Is it any different blogging as a non-minister?
I don't know yet. The one great release has been that I can finally say what ministers are not allowed to say, which is I really hope and pray that Barack Obama wins the presidential elections.
But there is a wider point about all this, isn't there? It's how much can a politician say? Here you are writing your opinions on every subject under the sun in your blog. Is that almost a self-destructive act now for a politician?
It possibly is, and I'll be disappointed if that turns out to be the case. I mean, I think we need to look again at the way we communicate with the public. I don't think the public are remotely impressed. In fact, I would say the opposite is the case, by ministers who sound as if all they're doing is reciting a Labour Party briefing paper. That has no resonance with anyone at all. You know, people want to be reassured that the politicians are normal people with normal doubts and normal thought processes. If by writing about my love of karaoke or my doubts about whether or not I should buy my teenage son Grand Theft Auto 4, if writing about that sort of thing has somehow blotted my copybook with Number 10, and I'm not saying that that has actually happened, but if that were to happen now or in the future, I think that's a very, very sad day for politics.
Ex-Railways Minister Tom Harris now spending more time with his blog. And that's all from us for another week. Don't forget you can see the best of this week's parliamentary committees over on BBC Parliament across the weekend.